Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation today. When I first spoke with Wim, thank you, Wim, for the invitation. When I first spoke with Igor, I was really, really interested about this project because, as Professor Ballon has explained very well, we are already working with several cities for behavioral change. And I think that honestly, there is nothing so really practical and very good as LimbU. And it's something that can really make a change. So I'm really interested to see how it's going to be developed within the cities. And today I will present you my idea of what can be the impact of LimbU on behavioral change and how we can address this impact, support the citizens to make changes in your cities. And we will see later on also our IMEC approach for behavioral change for smart cities. So when I discussed it with Igor and Wim about the LimbU project, we have identified a potential in two main things. The first one is that the project can have a real relevant impact on citizens, but also on municipalities. And we need to understand that this means for citizens to be part of a community. So the sense of community is really strong, and also sustainability will be the end point for the sense of community and all the activities that will be developed within LimbU. But there are also some transversal impacts that can be very useful. So the community participation is something that will be changed thanks to the co-creation activities that will be developed by the cities. It can have lots of impacts in several areas, but just for starting, I think that it can have also a relevant impact on alternative mobility, for example. So finding new ways of not using only the cars and all the traffic and create all the traffic congestion that we have in our cities can be very relevant because we can in a way move the citizens to change their behavior on mobility. But for sure, the main relevant impact will be on social cohesion, because we are going to ask the citizens to work for the community, for their community. And also, as a result, on local durable consumption, because we want to help people to understand that it's important to buy products on a local context. On the municipalities, the effects are really clear, at least for us. It will be mainly on a change of organizational culture and mindsets, and that's really, really important. Otherwise, we will never achieve the impact also on behavioral change on citizens if first the municipalities are not convinced to change their organizational cultures and mindsets. And this will happen also through participatory learning together with citizens. So it will be a double way. Both you will learn from citizens, I think, and citizens by themselves will learn from the municipalities. And the general context of sustainability and sense of community will be also very relevant for the municipalities, and it's the same that for the citizens. We have then identified some reflections because we are researchers in the end, and our objective is also to support smart cities in understanding what are the impacts. So it came from research. And there is a very interesting picture from Professor Kansari et al. And it's relevant because you see the main objective of all smart cities, but not only in Belgium and also around Europe, is to have in the end urban sustainability, which means more socio-economic impacts in the end. And the urban sustainability can be enacted only by taking into account also when using technologies, the human factor within the process with the citizens. And I think that LimbU is perfectly responding to this request to take into account the human factor. It can be enacted through transversal areas, domains. It can be in political behavior, so taking into account civic participation in the process. It can be also energy and environmental behavior, so different kinds of behavior. And sustainability and sustainable planning is enacted by LimbU through learning. And in the end, the main result will be on social sustainability. So it's very interesting to see that LimbU, without even know, I think, is already taken into account all the processes that in our research we are using for having a real sustainability of the cities. And I'm pretty much sure that it will be very relevant, not only at socio-economic level, but can be relevant in other sectors like energy, environment, mobility, and all the contexts that are really useful for smart cities. I will present now the IMEC approach, how we are doing the behavioral change analysis, how we are making the citizens to change their behavior. What we have done during the last year is to define a new approach for having experiments in real life context. So we are using technologies, but the human factor is very important, as I said before. And we don't want to do in a lab. We want to do with real citizens. And this is what we are doing, for example, with Antwerp and discussions with other cities in Belgium. What we are doing is to have big set of experiments with a lot of users. So in a large-scale trial, we can detect quantitative data, as Professor Ballon said, via sensors. But the real result is to make this link between technologies, how the citizens are using technologies, for example, blockchain can be one. And what are the results? What are the impacts in the end? We have designed for this reason a 6 steps approach for behavioral change. And I think the most relevant part for LimbU is the first part, because we start from the analysis of the context, and we see in each city we have different, very different contexts, can be big cities, small cities, but the determinants of behavioral change are really different also in several domains. If we are working on mobility, the contextual determinants are very different from retailing, for example. So in the first scoping part, we want to target the users and see what are the different behavior profiles for different categories of users. And what we can do is selecting a target, specify a target group, and then define what are the determinants of behavior of the citizen. So why a person is more interesting, for example, in using a bike instead of a car, and what are the contextual determinants? If it's raining, I'm still using the bike or not? And this can be used also in economic context, in local consumption, and in different frameworks. Starting from these determinants, we define the socioeconomic and environmental effects that can change a behavior. We map how the citizens are currently behaving, and then we identify a set of interventions for experiments. It can be large-scale trials, can be also 20 people. It can really be used in a sense for the general result that the city is going to have and is planning to have in the end. After the experiments, we want to see which are the deviations from the behavior mapping that we have identified. So if the citizens, we are planning to have some kind of behavior, but in the end is not, why? So what we can best do for making them intervening in a different way. We just don't look at the behavior of the citizens, but we want to look, as I said before, this behavior to the sustainability and to the economic models. So in the end, we also find an alternative motivation models, alternative interventions that can make citizens behaving in a way, in a different and what we want to achieve. We define incentives, we redefine incentives in the end, and then we can make other experiments and achieve the results that the municipality has planned. We are also able to define which are the side effects of this behavior, and in the end, defining new business models and sustainability plan. I know this sounds very difficult, maybe in a municipality and smart city context, because it's a real complex framework. But the objective of our work is to support the cities to reduce this complexity. So we are going to reduce the complexity by taking into account both the human individual factor and the city context. And by studying the contextual determinants, we then identify the areas of effect. I included here only some that can be relevant, but for each city can really, really be different. It can be quality of life, it can be an impact on well-being, on culture, on education, or as well as local consumption, so a poor monetary value. Starting from this analysis, we can then identify which are the contextual determinants, and in the end, how we can change behavior to have relevant impact on sustainability. We can also focus only on one part of the complex process. For example, we have identified 3 different tracks. The first one is behavioral consciousness. So we can change the awareness of the citizens on a specific behavior, and we want to change our mindset, their way of thinking, why I should take, for example, the bike instead of the car. But we can also decide in a city to have a change on the action. So we really want citizens to use more bikes than cars, not only change their mindset and their way of thinking. And that is something that can be developed through track 2. But in the end, the interventions will be really made on real life experiments, and the real change, behavioral change, is the final track, which is the most complex, and we are using this model to have an impact on the final track mainly, but we can also understand what are the awareness behind that and what are the actions and how the citizen can change their actions. I will just close my speech with what we think that should be the success measures for LimbU in developing behavioral change projects. As I said, we start from requirements, and it cannot only be technical requirements and related to technologies. We take into account also the social requirements, the economic and environmental requirements when developing behavioral change experiments. We define the set of target group profiles, and in the end, we want to see what is the value of the citizens to behave differently and have a real impact on the city. And the final success measure is always to enact a link between citizens and cities. So we want to have collaboration, we want to increase community participation, and we want to make the cities understand that they can trust the municipalities and they can really make a change in their municipalities. And we will support this through behavioral analysis, behavioral processes, and our model. And I think that it's really, really relevant also for LimbU, because if you don't understand what are our users, if we don't targeting the behavior profiles of the users, you can make the perfect technology, the perfect bank card. I can use it everywhere, both on local shops or big companies, but in the end, I would never make a change to do something for my society if I'm not really willing to, and if I don't see an advantage for me or for my community. So I think that's the main point that should be addressed here today.
Thank you very much, Francesca.